It's no secret that the OKC Thunder have one of the top offensive machines in the entire NBA in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and centered around his unstoppable driving game and elite shot creation, the Thunder have built a drive-and-kick heavy system that served as the foundation of the league's third-best offense last season. But despite their elite offense, it's actually the team's defensive identity that would most likely serve as the backbone to any argument declaring the Thunder's championship legitimacy. Well, you can look at the top three defensive teams last season, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Boston Celtics, and the Orlando Magic. You can wonder why these teams aren't receiving the same speculative hype for next season that OKC's been receiving, and you might not necessarily be wrong. Sure, Minnesota still has multiple-time DPOY Rudy Gobert, Boston will have its full rotation of two-way threats coming back fresh off winning an NBA title, while Orlando still has its young and lengthy core intact, but now with the addition of championship-level two-way player Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But looking at it, the Thunder, who had the fourth best defense in the league last season, have actually made some offseason moves that are next level. They let go of the weakest defender from their starting lineup in Josh Giddey, and they added two standout guys in Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, who both happen to be ranked in the top 5 of the defensive estimated plus-minus metric last season, indicating their tremendous impact on the defensive end. Plus, the Thunder are adding those two guys to a roster already full of highly versatile and highly aggressive defenders to form a 10-man rotation who defensively would rank A+ in terms of speed, versatility, instincts, and positional size. Combine that with this team's capacity to further improve given their collective young age, and on paper, OKC has a defensive ceiling that could sit higher above every other team in the NBA for the next few years. So what's good everyone, it's Real Balls here, and in this video, let's dive more into the numbers and into the Thunder's roster and why this team is actually expected to lock up the rest of the NBA. So let's get to it. The first question for opposing teams has to be, where do you actually start trying to break down OKC's defense? Well, teams could play them slow in the half-court, but OKC is a team who registered the second-best half-court defense in the NBA last season. The Thunder are filled with players who are capable of recovering and making multiple efforts on the defensive end across different defensive coverages. In fact, OKC allowed opponents to score just 0.95 points per possession on pick-and-rolls, which ranked first in the entire league. While opponents could try to hunt for mismatches, but the Thunder's defense is also built on switching against multiple positions. This is backed up by the 0.91 points per possession they allowed opponents to score in isolation last season, which ranked second best in the NBA, only behind the Boston Celtics. Crazy thing is, this OKC team could also display an attacking mindset on defense by forcing opponents to make mistakes, which is evidenced by the league-leading 15.7 opponent turnover percentage they produced last season. Well, during post-game interviews, Coach Mark Daigneault would mostly attribute the team's elite defense to the roster's competitive nature, as well as their ability to execute multiple defensive schemes. But I think at the ground level, that mindset only becomes relevant when you actually have the right personnel equipped to get regular defensive stops at the NBA's highest level, which is when GM Sam Presti's outstanding two-way roster building comes in. Well, on the perimeter for OKC, it all starts with Lu Dort, who's only 6'4", but who will 95% of the time be asked to guard the opposing team's #1 scoring option. Dort isn't only the Thunder's best perimeter defender, but advanced stats also paint him as one of the best, if not the best point-of-attack defender in the entire league. Basketball Index's advanced tracking actually quantifies a player's point-of-attack isolation defense by measuring their impact based on 3 metrics, such as on-ball defense, ball screen defense, and matchup difficulty. And last season, Lu Dort actually received above 90% scores in all 3 categories, which ultimately ranked him as the best point-of-attack defender in the entire NBA, among all players who spent 1,000 minutes on the court. Using his stable hips, quick feet, and upper body strength, Dort has been able to force missed game winners from the likes of LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Jamal Murray in the past, among others. Sure, there are a ton of elite lockdown defenders currently in the NBA, but I think what separates Dort from the rest is his ability to frustrate elite scorers by turning their supposed-to-be drives into tough contested jumpers, as supported by the 52 total non-charge offensive fouls that Dort drew last season, which is actually the most in the entire NBA. But then, OKC has another top-notch lockdown defender in Jalen Williams, who at 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan possibly might even have a higher defensive upside than Dort. Last season, despite being OKC's number 2 scoring option, J-Dub actually spent 30% of his time on the court defending the opposing team's number 1 option, and that is the 10th highest mark in the league by any defender according to Basketball Index. Well, the main thing that J-Dub brings on the defensive end is his versatility. Because of his size, length, as well as his competitive nature, OKC has been comfortable deploying him not only against guards, but also against bigger forwards and even some centers. In fact, according to NBA's matchup tracking data, the 6 players who J-Dub defended the most last season were Karl Anthony-Towns, Jalen Green, Jeremy Grant, Victor Wembanyama, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Lauri Markkanen. And with J-Dub defending them, no one, not even Wembanyama, shot more than 47% from the field. But aside from Dort and Williams, OKC has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is also 6'6" with a near 7-foot wingspan. But unlike other heliocentric superstar offensive players, Shai is actually not a net negative defender whose energy has to be preserved on the defensive end. In fact, Shai is abnormally active and disruptive on that end of the floor. He actually has the tools and the talent to be a constant point of attack defender, as we've seen during his first season in OKC with Chris Paul. But given the offensive load he has to carry for the team, the Thunder are wise enough to deploy Shai mostly off the ball, being more of a menace on the passing lanes, while guys like Dort and J-Dub mostly hounds the opposing team's top scoring option. And Shai has fully embraced that role while still maintaining elite defensive production. Last season, he was tied with the Aaron Fox with the most steals in the entire league, and add to that the 67 total blocks he recorded, and overall, Shai ranked 4th in the entire NBA in terms of steals and blocks combined. And it is crazy that he is the only guard to rank in the top 10 of that category, joining bigs such as Wembanyama, Anthony Davis, Chet Holmgren, and Walker Kessler in the top 5. Which is why it's no surprise that Shai has finished number 7 in the DPOY voting last season. This is what sets Shai apart from other elite scorers. The defensive mentality he brings on the court can't be applied to every MVP candidate who holds such a huge offensive load for their team. But then, coming off the bench, OKC also has incoming second-year guard Cason Wallace, who plays like a younger version of Drew Holiday. He's already advanced defensively for his age, and the team already trusts him to guard the opposing team's best player when Lu Dort is on the bench. In fact, Wallace actually ranks 6th in total minutes played for OKC behind the team's starting 5 last season. And of course, acting as the team's last line of defense is 7'1" Chet Holmgren, a DPOY level guy with elite rim protection skills, the length and the foot speed to hold his own on the perimeter, as well as the defensive activity that you don't usually see from players his size and age. Last season, no other player besides Brook Lopez has defended more shots than Chet in the entire NBA, and out of those, Chet has also produced the second most blocks league-wide, only behind 7'4" Victor Wembanyama. Plus, another testament to Chet's ability to defend all over the floor is the fact that, among all players who contested at least 250 shots last season, Chet Holmgren held opponents to the 6th lowest field goal percentage, only behind elite defensive big men such as Joel Embiid, Rudy Gobert, and Kristaps Porzingis. Crazy thing is, given their activity on the defensive end, neither Cason Wallace nor Chet Holmgren has missed a single game in their rookie season, but more importantly, neither one has looked flustered when guarding elite players, and both of them will just get better in year number 2. But then, OKC's defensive identity further extends to their other role players. Isaiah Joe is known as a knockdown shooter, but he is as tough as they come on defense. In fact, Joe and reserve big man Jalen Williams both rank in the top 10 in terms of charges drawn last season. Meanwhile, Aaron Wiggins and Kenrich Williams are hyperactive switchable wings at 6'5", who both play bigger than their size. And we haven't even seen enough of 6'10" Ousmane Dieng to determine his potential impact on the Thunder's defense. Overall, that combination of youth and talent is a big reason why expectations for OKC's defense could be so high, and there's also the fact that it was already good even when there were some evident weak spots. Well, even the Celtics' elite defense has shown some wrinkles last season, as evidenced by Boston actually allowing opponents to score the second most transition 3-pointers in the entire NBA. OKC, on the other hand, actually allowed the most corner 3-pointers last season, and part of why the Thunder allowed that many 3-pointers was their inability to keep opponents away from the glass, as the Thunder were the second worst defensive rebounding team in the league, only behind Washington, which obviously reflected the team's relative lack of size. Enter big man Isaiah Hartenstein, who comes to OKC fresh off a season where he averaged 8 rebounds per game, with 3 of those also coming off the offensive glass. In fact, Hartenstein registered the 10th highest contested defensive rebounding percentage among all 46 centers who played at least 1,000 minutes on the floor last season. He should be able to provide that vertical pop and boxing out that OKC needs from a big body, especially when Chet Holmgren is on the bench. But more importantly, among all 131 players who defended at least 1,000 shots in the restricted area last season, Hartenstein held opponents to the second lowest field goal percentage, only behind Chet Holmgren. But whether or not he spends a ton of time with Chet Holmgren on the court, you could just imagine how Hartenstein would just further enhance OKC's already elite defense, as having him at the center position should enable OKC to play more drop coverage, which should ideally result to fewer corner three-pointers from opponents. And if Hartenstein's arrival wasn't enough, OKC now also have Alex Caruso, who has made 2 straight All-NBA defensive teams and who Basketball Index ranked as the second best point of attack defender in the NBA last season, only behind Lu Dort, which isn't shocking, as Caruso can lock down guards and wings on the perimeter, but he is remarkably also such a good paint defender for a 6'5" guy. In fact, Caruso actually ranked in the 76th percentile of the league last season in terms of points allowed at the rim, which is the best mark among all guards. And I think it's crazy just how much Caruso's presence can impact his team when he is on the floor. For as bad as the Chicago Bulls were defensively the past few years, they actually ranked in the 97th percentile of the league in terms of forcing opponent turnovers for 3 straight seasons when Caruso was on the floor. Now, there's just so much promise for OKC's transition game to continue thriving, given how 2 of the 3 steals leaders in the NBA last season, in Shai and Caruso, will now share the same backcourt. But more importantly, with his arrival, OKC will now have the luxury of deploying 2 of the NBA's best point-of-attack defenders in Caruso and Dort against elite star backcourt tandems such as Tatum and Brown or Luka and Kyrie, which is particularly scary, especially when the likes of J-Dub, Cason Wallace, or Shai are all waiting on the wings. Altogether, OKC's new roster composition will just allow them to match up with pretty much every team towards a potential march to the top of the Western Conference. The Thunder now have the size to battle Denver, Dallas, and Minnesota's frontcourt, while also having the tight perimeter group to go toe-to-toe with the Suns, Warriors, Clippers, and Grizzlies. This Thunder team can be the best at protecting the rim, they can force a lot of turnovers, they can hound you on the pick and roll, they can switch across multiple positions and defend in isolation, and now they can be significantly better than they were on the defensive glass. But most importantly, this team can do all of those without having to compromise their ability to score. OKC already had a rotation that was able to fuel the 3rd best offense in the league even before their offseason additions. Well, sure, in an era wherein scoring is at its peak, the Thunder definitely won't record a defensive rating that compares to that of the 2004 Detroit Pistons or the 2008 Boston Celtics. But relative to whatever next season's league average is, this OKC team has the personnel to rise above the rest of the league. And if defense still really wins championships in the modern NBA, then it seems like the Thunder has a pretty good chance of winning one with this roster that they currently have. So thank you guys if you've actually made it this far into the video, but what are your actual expectations of the Thunder's defense and just their overall play next season? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Again, this is Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.